College admissions can be particularly grueling, especially if your dream college or university happens to be in the top ranked ones. Which is why it's always a smart idea to consider speaking to somebody who's already walked the path. My name is Anand Venkatesan. I'm the founder of mentorscapital.com. We are a mentorship, test preparation, and admissions consulting platform. In the series of globe-trotting conversations, I speak to some of our past achievers and ask them to recount their journey on how they prepared for the GMAT, applied to various colleges and universities, and aced personal interviews in their own journey. Hi Arushi, welcome to today's conversation and just to quickly introduce Arushi for all of you watching this video. Arushi is somebody who graduated from Delhi and then went to ISB Hyderabad and she comes with a very unique background and set of aspirations in life and I'm sure that will make this conversation very interesting. Thanks for joining me today, Arushi.
Thank you so much, sir. It's just a pleasure to talk to you again after so long.
Absolutely, it has been way too long. So do you want to quickly tell us what you've been doing in the meantime?
So since my admission, actually a bunch of things. First is I really, I took a deferral after term one for various reasons. And one, that year in itself, when you have the security of an admission and then you really go out there and, do all the things that you would normally never do out of a lot of sort of apprehensions and fears. So you go out there, you do that. So I went to Bombay, I was acting and I was in TVCs, in theater, and I was also doing some direction work. And because I wanted to go into media and entertainment, that sort of experience just really built on to what I eventually want to do. And post that, I've joined here. I've been on campus since about June, July. And a bunch of things have happened since then. Lots of academic study disciplines like finance, which I had no idea about. Despite Ashoka and all of those other liberal art things. Yes, and then I've taken up a ELP with Red Chilies, which has been fun. And the Media and Entertainment Club is like my home here for that.
Right. Okay. So it's interesting that you mention your, the fact that you took a sabbatical and explored some creative work that excites you, work that you're really passionate about. And so I thought the best way to start this conversation is to talk about your career goals, right? Because I think I would like to let everybody know that, you clearly came from a humanities background. You went to Ashoka, did a fellowship there, and things were headed in one direction. And suddenly, in the midst of all of that, management happened, right? So I think it would help all of us better understand your perspective if you could talk about it.
So, yes, you're right. It was actually, I think a bunch of things just conspired, for this to happen. I did sociology from Hindu, then I did the Young India Fellowship from Ashoka, as you mentioned. After that, I was actually working, and while I used to do a day job with a marketing agency, in the evenings I used to go for theatre rehearsals and do shows on the weekends and teach poetry, and I've also been writing. And in the midst of that, suddenly, while I was actually preparing for a play, which I was very excited about, COVID happened. And the theater shut down, and then, all of that happened. So my long-term plan had been to sort of do something of my own in production, probably start something of my own. But as you clearly know, I had a very sketchy business plan. I think I still think it's very sketchy. But I hope I'm going to get there. So clearly, I needed some sort of education in terms of how the market functions. So I was a science student, so that part I had done a little bit. Then I was an art student. I was into the creative field, but I think business I had no idea. And if I want to run a firm, I need know how firms are run, just basic economics. So with that, I thought that this might just be a good time because I wouldn't be distracted by my urges to go and rehearse and do this and do that. So I gave the GMAT. Thanks to you, things worked out. And yes, this decision to go for an MBA happened.
So most of us, when we think about career objectives and what do we want to do, after an MBA and maybe even years after that, decades after that, the plan always seems to be quite fluid, right? So there's very little idea to begin with, and then you start to think, and then something sort of crystallizes. But clearly, in your case, the plan has more or less stayed on course, and you've been trying to sort of assimilate different experiences that take you in that direction, right? Is that something that you've observed on campus from your peers? Is that something that stays more or less with others, or do people generally change their plans, or at least revisit their plans once the program starts?
So in it could just be a sort of bias sample, but in case of my immediate friend circle, I feel that most of them have stuck around with what they plan to do. I think the process of writing the MBA application itself just clarifies what people want to do. And I think a lot of them have sort of stuck around. In my case, I feel like there has been a combination of structure and flow. So while there are aspects of what I had thought which I've stuck to, I had no plans of going to Bombay and engaging in all of that creative work. And even the way the year has turned out, I remember we had talked about how ELP could be an important sort of interesting thing that I could do, which would be very relevant for me. And at the Media and Entertainment Club, which was just a special interest group back then, could be but the way everything transpired and like the kinds of people, it was all something I could have never planned. So I think I think for most people it's a mixture of structure and flow.
Yeah. But sometimes what you imagine from the outside as seemingly challenging can actually fructify, right?
Oh yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I say that because you mentioned, the ELP, and you mentioned media and entertainment cell, and one of the talking points, even in our conversations, is always, if media and entertainment is your target, then are there enough companies coming down to hire numbers? And this was always a big challenge when.
Yeah, still is.
Absolutely, but I can clearly tell from your tone and the way that you're talking about things. While it might not all be rosy, there are obviously challenges along the way, but shaping up towards a clear future. Wonderful. So let's start with this chronologically, right? So clearly you said at some point you figured out COVID happened and you decided that then MBA was needed. Was that specifically related to just COVID, or was the decision to do an MBA reliant on other factors, right? I'm questioning the timing of your choice more than anything. So what do you have to say about that?
I think I knew that I would eventually want to go for an MBA. It was just a question of when. I had initially thought that perhaps once I use the younger years to sort of delve into the creative side, then I would eventually go and do an MBA. I mean, those were the things that was the direction I was thinking along. But when COVID happened, theaters were closed. There wasn't much that I could do. But honestly, I feel like the timing sort of worked out only because one is the fact that I did eventually just get an entire year for myself because of the deferral. And the second thing is that now, because of the networks I have, I sort of have some idea as to what to do, where to go, who are the people I would like to contact, even with respect to the creative thing. So I think it's.
Any persons or personalities that served as inspiration for you when the thought of management and MBA and ISB sort of fell in place? Did you look up to somebody who sort of inspired you to take this particular direction? I ask this also because, it was media and entertainment, and it was a tough choice, between pursuing a master's in that field as opposed to a management program.
So my honest answer to that is that I was motivated more by my own logical conclusions rather than any particular personality. Now, I of course have people I look up to. I mean, Siddharth Roy Kapoor was here, and he's actually done an MBA from Jamnalal Bajaj, and then he went to PNG and then went into films. So I mean, now I have some more examples of people who sort of done it and I've also met some other people who went and did an MBA, then became actors, etc., etc. But back then, for me, it was just this logical thought that people who are often creative are making the best content, and nobody's watching it because they know very little about distribution and the commercials of it. And a lot of people who are really good at the commercial side often haven't had enough of an education in terms of what to produce, social issues, understanding just taste, content, art in general. So I for myself, my own vision was to achieve a balance of both of these things, and it was mostly because of this desire that I was motivated to educate myself in business.
That answer almost takes me back to our form filling days and our endless discussions about the purpose.
Yes.
Anyhow, coming back to so you've decided, right, that okay, GMAT's that the MBA has to happen now, and I think expedited by, let's say, the onset of COVID. When did you start preparing for the GMAT? Because clearly, I mean, one big cog in that entire admission wheel is to get a good GMAT score, one that is competitive, one that gets you in, right? So when did you start preparing for the GMAT?
So I don't know if I've told this to you before, but I think it must have been in 2020 June, July-ish types. But I do remember the point in my life where I decided. It was 2 years into my job, and then I was transferred into some division where I wasn't really enjoying. I wasn't really getting along with my manager, and before that I was extremely happy with my job. And so that sudden realization of okay, where do I go now? And I had also very little agency in terms of calling the shots and changing. The thing in my office worked out eventually. They sent me back to my team because I had really spoken to the management, etc. But it was during that time mixed with COVID that I sort of decided that okay, now I'm going to start preparing for my for my GMAT. And I think it was around the month was around, I think April, May types.
Yeah, and how long did your preparation take in earnest? Right, you started April, May, and by when were you ready?
I think by October, November types, I was ready. Of course, my preparation was not ideal. It was patchy. Then I was also working a job. I was doing a couple of other projects with that, and plus my maths is just absolutely terrible. So it took me a while to get there.
Yeah, but then like with most people, I think the first half of the prep always tends to be scratchy and patchy at best. But then as long as you recover in the end, and as long as you go to a higher gear, things work out, right? And that's what happened in your case too. So
yes. For me, the timeline was certainly not the typical 2 months, 3 months that I kept hearing. It was, I think, it was about 4 or 5 months of but I'm fine with that.
Much covered in the end, isn't it? Yeah. But which part? I know you mentioned quant was, you believe you're bad at quant, but was that the area that troubled you the most, or were parts of verbal also challenging?
I stepped in thinking that quant would be the challenge, and I felt like, chalo, English, I'll probably sail through. But honestly, I'm unsure of whether this is something you said or Abhishek sir said, but I've actually went on to give that suggestion to other people I've met post that, which was to not have any preconceived notions about what you're good at and what you're bad at, because I remember even in my final score, I got a slightly higher than average score in maths, and about whatever in English. I mean, I would have expected a little higher, because I spent most of my time studying maths and did not study English as much. And so yeah, I mean, I would actually just like to highlight that particular thing, that nobody could have had more staunch preconceived notions about their abilities as compared to me. But yeah, I think it works for the better if you sort of job that.
Right. So I'm trying to understand with, sure, I think I'll take your point where, I think preconceived notions can only work against you because, most people tend to assume that if it's a weak area, you need to work on it. And if it's a strong area, you can lay back. When exam like the GMAT, it's actually the other way around, right? So if English is your strength, then you could capitalize on it a lot more. And it tends to pull up your percentile that much more, right? But my question to you is actually different. My question to you is, so what helped you, score that 700 on the GMAT? Because, clearly from day one, that was the benchmark, that was the number that, you believed to be a good qualifying score for a school like ISB. So what changed it? Was it working hard at individual areas, or was it just taking plenty of mock tests?
So I took certain topics, picked up certain topics which were most weighty in terms of marks allocated to them, and this is, I think I'm completely repeating what you had actually told me. So I took all these portions which were most weighty, and then I started studying them from the scratch. Started doing questions from like 600 plus to then moving on to 700 plus. Yeah, I mean, I think that is pretty much what I did for both quant and verbal.
Do you remember how many mock tests you took for the GMAT?
Yes, I do remember. I think I would have taken 10, 12 plus mock.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. So the mocks do, help you diagnose and analyze, and at least a lot of these questions about what should I work on, what needs work.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, once you take the mock, you go and analyze it. Try not look at the score as much as you look at, what the weak areas are, and then just go on and do that. Just pick up an area one by one and try and master it, and then give another mock to see how it works out.
Any magic words of advice for a GMAT aspirant? Something that you believe can really open up the score? Yeah.
Yes, I feel like for me it was maintaining an error log, as you had suggested, because even till the last date I was just going back, because honestly, despite maintaining the error log, I think that my mistake patterns were quite repetitive. And before I really taken your advice and very seriously started maintaining that error log, I think I was not cognizant at all that I was making the same mistakes over and over. So I think after I made this error log, my preparation became much faster, because I just understood the 4-5 typical kinds of mistakes I'm making, and then and even during the exam I could sort of recollect it because it was on the top of my mind.
Right. Okay. Indeed. So if you're listening in, start maintaining a very, very, good error log, a log of where you're going wrong. Okay, let's change direction slightly. We've been talking about the exam, the GMAT, but clearly getting into a top B school has, it has the GMAT as one of the components, but by no means all of it, right? So talk to me about the ISB, right? So when did you, sure, you had the deadlines in place and you were already thinking of an MBA, but when did you start the application process, right? The essays or the NORs, any part of it?
So I applied in round 2, and I think I started working on it about a month back.
Okay.
But but I think the real work happened in the last 10 days.
Yeah.
Yes, but yes, from the first month on, I think there was a subconscious level of work that was happening in terms of building my story, understanding my story, of course, discussing how to what narrative to choose with you, like over and over on the call and text and everywhere.
Absolutely, it does take time. I think the first application, I mean, I just wanted a confirmation from you, but the belief would be that it takes about 3 weeks, give or take, because a lot of time goes into just, calling your recommenders and
Yeah.
getting those ready. So
Yeah.
behind the scenes, a lot of work happens, right?
Yes.
But now looking back at that, application and the time that you spent on it and the effort that you put into it, uh, would you be able to circle one area of your personality or profile that stood you apart, right? That got you the admit, right? Is there some conviction about what that winning area was in your application?
So um, I actually felt this sense of understanding what set me apart during the interview. To be very honest,
Okay.
I mean, I feel like during the application, it must have been. I mean, people talk about diversity, and yes, there is diversity, but diversity mostly means that, okay, non-engineers, and then you mostly talk about students who are economics or BCom students, or but I mean, not only in terms of academics, but also in terms of what I'd done. It was also very fine arts based, very creative, and then. That sort of a background, I think even now when I'm on campus, I feel that that's what makes me stand out. I thought that could be a disadvantage and all of that, but I think it's in the way you ultimately write your story. And also I think a lot of parts were looking very sort of unrelated, but in the way I synthesized it, it felt like it was all geared up towards a certain goal, and so it made a lot of sense. And during the interview, I feel like I the sense that I got, which stood me apart, was I felt like I had something to say uh, in life about, I mean, what I'm geared towards doing is essentially stemming from this uh, very honest truth inside me, that okay, there is something I want to say, and this is where I am coming from, and I try to say it in my authentic voice. And I feel that perhaps got the interviewers a little
Yeah,
keen on.
that comes across as no surprise. In any case, I think something that I really liked that you said was embrace your, diversity. Embrace, even if you're insecure about, I don't think I meet the standard profile that a B school or an ISB looks at. Embrace it, right? And I think it's lovely that you credit, your success to that factor. It's wonderful, and I think it's going to inspire a lot of people who watch this video, right? And I certainly hope that it does. So overall, you're saying it took you about a month to sort of shape this story and get that confidence, and that really does. The manner in which you speak in an interview can really make the difference, isn't it? Anything else that you remember about the interview specifically that what you guys talked about? Was it all was it all business? Was it all about career goals and what you've done, or was there space in there for just casual conversation or something offbeat?
So I went in with a reasonable, I think a couple more, probably about 3-4 more interviews, and they don't really give you that much time. But and this is what always happens to me in interviews, whether it works out or doesn't work out. Uh, I cannot look at interviews in this hierarchical fashion of okay, this person uh, getting this out of me, and but that is what interviews about. I understand that, but I think it's also about the way the person giving the interview answers and steers the direction of the interview. And And I feel like because I can't not be conversational, I don't know how to be any other way. My interview personally was quite uh, was quite conversational. When I later talked about it, people were like, "Okay, this is a point where they were grilling you. That's the point where they were grilling you." But I honestly didn't feel grilled at all. One is the way they were talking to me was actually very respectful and just made me feel, very safe in general. But also I felt like they were genuinely interested in understanding, why or hows of certain parts of what I mentioned in my profile.
It's quite a, I mean, it's quite a constant as far as ISB processes go.
Yeah.
The panel is always very empathetic. It is very, supportive. It's not grilling. Most interviews at ISB are rarely ever grilling interviews, but they're deeply personal. Right?
Yes, they did.
So it's, again, I think it ticks off on those things, about their process. But I do want to ask you, after the interview was done, and we all tend to do this, right? We all tend to self-evaluate and try to put a pin on it, saying this is how it went. So what was what was your reaction when you walked out of that, interview panel? Was there a sense of, I'm going to get through, or was there a sense of, I don't know, could go either ways?
There was a sense of I don't know, but I was actually really sort of analyzing my interview and seeing what parts I feel like I did well and what parts I feel I didn't do well. So from what I remember, I feel the part that I felt that I did not do as well as I would have liked, even though I had thought, of course I had thought about it enough, was make my case of exactly why I want to do an MBA, and which is the most important question. And like, if you go wrong there, so I felt during that time that I hope my point is coming out clearly, and I hope it's so. I was a little unsure of whether it's coming across clearly or not. So I was just, I feel like I was a little uncertain about that
That might have just been a sum total of all your insecurities.
That I have no idea, but yeah.
Okay. I think it still, gives us a very healthy perspective of what the process is like, right? And the importance plays that the ISB interview, the ISB process actually places on, you fitting with both their, expectations
Yes.
of the leader, and also you having a clear, defined path.
Yes, and I feel like that's one thing I would like to add. The interview is so much around why do you want to come here? Where do you want to go? Where does ISB fit into your life? And honestly, it's not so much about how do you fit into ISB, because I feel like the GMAT part and the application part kind of takes care of that. And the interview round is more about sort of understanding where does this 1 year figure out in your life, and understandably so, because this 1 year just go, it just goes so fast that if you really don't know what you're in here for, it's so easy to get scattered. So I totally empathize with why they would want to center their interview around this.
Sure. I think, I think that sort of emphasizes all the things that we've come to expect of top T schools, both in India and abroad. I think there are some commonalities, and then there are some unique aspects, right? And I think you've been throwing light on enough of those. But one last question I do want to ask you. Anything else about the MBA journey, the preparation, the hard work, the all the thinking and sort of creating the narrative? Anything else that you think can really help an aspirant out, that you'd like to sort of leave some words of advice?
So again, this is coming from my experience, but a lot of people have also sort of come to me with a similar problem, and so I hope this helps. I suffer from anxiety, and it is bad, and so for people who have that, or people who tend to, I don't do well on competitive exams at all. In fact, if I'm calculating and somebody looks at my paper, I'm just like, have you never seen numbers? Like, can't you just look somewhere else? So I feel working towards staying balanced in life during the preparation process is also very important. One thing that really helped me, and I actually uh, I give a lot of importance to this now that I look back at it. I am somebody to stay grounded and not anxious. I have to do something creative every 3 days. Otherwise, I lose my center of being. In fact, that picture you see at the back, it's Starry Nights by Vincent Van Gogh, and I started painting during that time while I started my preparation and I started learning how to cook. And so I was doing all these creative things which were really sort of keeping me balanced, and it did not let me lose sense of what I'm truly about. And somehow that in a very weird way helped me manage my anxiety outside, what people usually tell you: have good food, have water, meditate. For me, it was just doing something that keeps me in sync with who I really am and what I get my really very very internal confidence from.
Absolutely. I think that's very insightful of you, because I think at some level, I think most people who do fail, and I don't really think not getting through a B school process is really failure. But if you want to be critical of yourself, I think the failure in most cases, if at all, can be attributed to exam day nerves, or just being nervous in the interview, and just making those little tiny mistakes because you're anxious. And I think what you've said can really help somebody take control of their life. It could be sport, right? It could be music. It could be
Absolutely.
something that you like to do, and make sure that you balance that with your preparation, right?
Yes.
Beautifully put, very nicely put. I couldn't have done that better myself. But just before we close this interview out, I do want to hear about what you have to say about Mentors Capital, and how you think we figured we had a place for you in your success, in the way that you got into your dream school.
So I think 2 to 3 things were very clear to me from the beginning, because I am somebody who's also gone down the path of doing medicine, blah blah. So I had gone to coaching institutes before, and so what I did know was I didn't want to go the same way, because I had gone to Akash in medicine, and of course, lots of great things happened there. But I knew that I personally work better with less calculative teams, I guess. I don't know. I'm just somebody who thinks out loud. I need a more sort of free structure, more personalized approach, because I feel like I do come with a different set of experience as compared to most people who apply for an MBA. So I knew that I didn't want to go for the typical really, really big institutes. And I remember having this conversation with my father as well. Like, so he was like, are you sure? I've never heard, and don't you think so and so institute has a bigger name? Their kid is doing from there, etc., etc. So I told my father 2 things: that see, I need to pick a team and a place, and more importantly, just people, because that's what's going to drive your application. It's not the name. So having spoken to you and Abhishek sir, I was like, this works for me in a very different way, because both of you have a very different way of thinking as compared to me, which helps. But at the same time, I felt like you had the empathy to step down to my level, understand where I'm coming from, and then reshape my story vis-a-vis just sort of strapping out whatever I had to say and making it in a certain way. So that was a very very important reason why I decided that I'm going to stick through, and I stuck. I think I started from GMAT, and I think I stuck around all the way, and there was honestly no second guessing happening at any point anyways. And the second thing that I was very sure of was I wanted to come to ISB. I did not give CAT. I wasn't preparing for it. I wasn't. There was a time when I thought that okay, I might do foreign applications, because at that point I was like, okay, am I really narrowing down my options here? But it was very specific to ISB, because it had this 1 year curriculum, and so.
Okay. And is it possible for you to describe Mentors Capital in a single word or phrase? Could you encapsulate your experience with us in a phrase or you're a poet, you're from the creative fields. And as much as I hate to, I'm going to put you under the lens here and ask you.
You're absolutely putting me under the spot, but but honestly, I mean, if I have to, if there is one thing that I have got from, just being a part of your team here is this sense of belief which had been there throughout. So I think believe is the word that I would say, because that comes in most honestly, because whether it was believing that I could get over my fear of quant, whether it was believing that I could do an application, being that sort of non-typical aspirant, then whether it was believing while I was waiting for the results, and just throughout, I feel like that's the one thing that I've got from.
Lovely. That's so lovely of you to. I mean, I'd like to say that we believe in every single student, but I think this belief is always sort of grounded in the traits and the personality that you bring, and I think that's where that belief stemmed from, and I'm glad that you've actually vindicated our belief and our and our support all along. And I mean, you continue to inspire us, and I'm sure you continue to inspire a lot of students from future batches as well. Right? So we wish you all the best, Arushi. This was a lovely conversation. I think. Thank you for taking time out. I know you're really running between classes and assignments and all of that. So thanks for making the time. I wish you all the very best for all future endeavors, and do stay in touch with us. I mean, that's
absolutely, and thank you for this conversation, because in the midst of actually doing an MBA and just being really sort of like angry at, why is there this deadline and that deadline, I think just having this conversation sort of made me look back at how much of a journey I undertook to come here. So I want to respect what I'm doing a little bit more than I
like a double underline on. I think I deserve to do good at this. Yes. Absolutely. I stay inspired and continue to inspire others. Thanks, Arushi. You have a great day.
Thank you. So same to you.